we can get so caught up in, all this work that we put into just to achieve one outcome. I wish that a younger version of myself kind of enjoyed the journey a little bit more because I feel like the outcome is something that we cannot always control, but what we can control are the choices that we make along the way and, enjoying the mistakes and how we learn from them.
Many people think innovation belongs to a select few with the right title, funding, or perfect idea. What if that's not true? Welcome to Innovate Where You Are. I'm Christy Venny. Each episode, I talk with people across industries, builders, educators, founders, and students who are creating change in real time. We explore the messy side of innovation, the risks, pivots, and lessons behind the work. Because innovation starts with curiosity, takes courage, and begins right where you are. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Rhea Ojah, a recent graduate whose experiences span entrepreneurship, community service, nonprofit leadership, art, tech, and public service. I've had the privilege of working with Rhea personally, and one of the things I admire most is her willingness to jump into new challenges and learn as she goes. I'm excited for listeners to hear how she thinks about innovation, leadership, and the future. Rhea, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Christy. I'm glad to be here too.
Rhea, when people look at your resume, they see a wide variety of activities and accomplishments too. But if someone met you for the first time and asked, "Who is Rhea?" what would you want them to know?
Want them to know that I am someone who is really creative. And I feel like I've always used art throughout my life to help people, help my community, as well as in my school. And I think that art and creativity really manifests itself a lot in my life in many different aspects. Like you mentioned, I feel like those accomplishments and achievements may seem great on paper, but I feel like behind, I guess, the screen, it's a lot more to that. And I think it's a lot about having passion and wanting to care about the community that really makes a difference.
That's so powerful. So this podcast, it's called Innovate Where You Are. And you mentioned creativity. When you see the word innovation, what comes to mind and where do you think you've seen innovation show up in your life?
Yeah, when I think of innovation, I think of using your creativity and, it doesn't necessarily have to be artistic skill, that could be problem solving to fix an issue or improve a situation in your community. So for me, I think innovation really is the connection between creativity and helping others. So in my own life, I started a nonprofit organization with my friends called the NeuroNext Foundation, and that is a branch of an existing nonprofit based out of Texas. We use we use crafts and art to bring the community together. So, for example, we've collaborated with the Dublin Chamber of Commerce as well as the Dublin Rotaract in order to create crafts with the community for the Dublin Rotaract Talent Show a couple years ago. And we donate those crafts to the James Cancer Hospital. So I honestly love being a part of this nonprofit just because we're able to make an impact in the community and really make a difference with something as tiny as an origami heart or a tissue paper flower. And I think it's really impactful to see how those patients are able to, have something in the corner of their hospital room that makes things a little bit brighter. So knowing that we're able to bring together people of all ages in order to create something really special, that means a lot to me.
Absolutely. A lot of times building community and just making sure people feel seen and connected is the most important thing, whether it's through art or some other type of activity. It just takes someone taking action, making an effort so that they know they're cared for, that they belong. I think that is so amazing that you stepped up in order to do that kind of work in our community. It's been really impactful and probably great learning too, right?
Sure. Yeah. I feel like definitely had a lot of learning experiences, especially with working with others and learning how to communicate effectively with learning how to communicate effectively with organizations as big as the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. I think that with running a nonprofit, being high schoolers, it was definitely a great learning experience, and I'm really grateful for it.
It's fantastic. So, thinking of that and also the time you've spent with visual art, entrepreneurship, tech, and volunteering, well, and academics too. You've been very strong in your academic career so far, and I expect you'll continue to do so. Most people feel pressure to pick a lane, or they're really pushed into doing one thing well, or maybe two things well. But you've tried so many things. Have you ever felt that pressure? And what have you learned from exploring all these interests?
I've definitely felt that pressure. I feel like nowadays there's a lot of pressure for students to, decide whether or not to go to college and pick a major at the beginning of high school or even in middle school sometimes, and then decide to take classes that align with their chosen field of interest. However, I feel like that is definitely one path of success and it works for a lot of people, but it is by no means the only path of success. And I think that exploration and finding yourself looks different for everyone. So for me, yeah, that meant, volunteering at the library, volunteering at the zoo, two completely unrelated things. I found that I've enjoyed helping people through both of those things. So I feel like, picking one lane, it can definitely be really beneficial, especially if students want to focus on one thing in their life and they know that one thing that they're passionate about. But at the same time, I don't think it's bad. In fact, I think it's incredible for students to choose many different interests to explore and explore many different interests. I mean, we have colleges having the option of double majoring now, and students are going into entrepreneurship or the workforce right after high school, and I find that really inspiring.
You're making me think about the need in our society, in our workforce, in our world today for adaptability. Being adaptable is so important. And you being curious about lots of different fields, lots of different types of engagements, I'm guessing that's helping to prepare you for being adaptable and knowing that there is a connection between these things. Like you said, you've mentioned that caring for people, being a helper, like that's something that is important to you that has kind of been throughout your activities. The arts, there's sort of a strand with the arts and creativity that's been consistent with you. Do you think you'll continue to be the kind of person that explores new avenues and new interests and um, continuing that to help people or to use your creativity?
I feel like that is honestly at the core of who I am. I feel like a lot of times people look at me and they're like, wow, I feel like you've done so many different things, but they don't really connect. And I'm like, well, maybe, but honestly, I think that it's so worth it to take any opportunity to help my community or help someone else or brighten someone else's day with, doing something like community service or customer service. I think all of those things are really beneficial and they really do make a positive impact.
Oh, definitely. Can you think about a problem or opportunity or an idea that inspired you that you brought to life? Something new, and what'd you learn from?
It's a great question. So actually in the pandemic, this was around, I think the beginning of the pandemic, 2020. Um, Obviously people were kind of afraid to leave their houses, and as well as that with the hygiene involved in, bakeries and restaurants, things of that nature. But my sister and I, we were like, we obviously still want to eat dessert. We still want to celebrate birthdays, and we still want to see those smiles on people's faces when they get a custom birthday cake. So we created a home bakery business where we started creating cupcakes, treats, and cakes for our friends and family. And that became really successful around when I was in eighth or ninth grade. And honestly, it was really incredible to see how something so small can make such a big difference, because all of a sudden we were getting so many orders from all around our community, and people were really interested in taking a chance on us, even though we were beginners. So I feel like having that experience has honestly changed me a lot for the better. I feel like that made me not afraid to take chances and, not be afraid of failure. And I think that is so important in today's world. So I'm honestly really grateful that we took a chance and that people decided to take a chance on us. And honestly, seeing that business come to life, growing our following on social media, all of that felt so surreal, but also like so fulfilling at the same time.
Absolutely. I am thinking about a word you had in there that is so important, failure. So you said it in a way that, we learned to fail and to work through things, something to that effect. And I think about how many young people struggle with that nowadays, how they see picture perfect things on social media. They see their peers excelling. You come from a very competitive high school where it's the norm that everyone is doing really well. And there's such pressure and stress with that. Do you think when you were in middle school, getting through the pandemic, but having that kind of experience that helped to sort of insulate you almost or provide you with a foundation that failure that you will be okay. You can do it. You built your confidence that I can fail and still move forward and be successful afterwards.
For sure. I think taking risks is something that I learned to do because I've always been a very type A kind of person where I need to have a plan and then a backup plan and a backup plan for that. And I think starting my own business, I realized that things happen that you don't expect. People might cancel an order or the store might run out of a certain ingredient. And even though those things seem really small, in the moment they felt really big, like really big setbacks. But I honestly think that taught me to be resilient and, adapt, like you mentioned earlier, bounce back from the adversity and, learn to grow from that. That reminds me, my sophomore year of high school, that was the first time I ever took AP classes, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna do three. We're gonna do three for the first time.
Brave.
Um, yeah, I mean, I was ambitious. I still am ambitious, but towards the end of my sophomore year, my grandmother unfortunately passed away, and that was a really difficult experience for me. Um, I think it was really hard to balance really difficult academic classes while also going through a lot emotionally. Um, and I think during those times, looking back and reflecting on that, I think I realized how much stronger of a person I am because of it. But in the moment, I can definitely understand why people feel afraid to fail because it does feel jarring. It feels scary. And that's normal, unfortunately. Growing up, I mean, it's all about facing your fears. Um, and obviously, the fear of losing family is definitely a big one that I still have. So, learning how to balance my academics as well as, my family and spending time with the people that I love, that is the most important thing I think that I learned from that experience is that, despite all the failure and all the hardship, if you can believe in yourself and get through it at the end of the day, you're going to be okay.
You did something really, really inspiring with her passing. You created a portrait of her. You used your artistic ability, your creativity, and you received significant recognition for that. I'm guessing you poured your heart and soul into it as well as your skills. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I think definitely going through something really difficult, like losing a family member, I think the most important thing to do during that time is to find an outlet that can, let you feel your emotions because honestly, the only way to get past it is through it. So for me, listening to music was a big thing for me. And I know that works for a lot of people, but again, I've always been a really hands-on person, and I feel like physically creating an art piece that also helped me honor her legacy, that was really healing for me. So I'm not gonna lie, I was working on that portrait before she had passed when she was getting really sick. And then coming in to the classroom to work on that portrait after she had passed, it was difficult and it was really difficult every single day. And I think it's important to take a break and take a step back. But after a couple weeks, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to revisit this. And so I did. And even though it felt painful, it also felt freeing at the same time. So I think finding, an artistic outlet, whether that be, music or art, painting, drawing, etc., some type of creative outlet to, express your emotions is so, so important. Um, and I think it is so easy to get lost nowadays, on social media. It's so easy to hide away in a corner of your room and just ignore the world around you. And it might work for a little while, but at the end of the day, it's not what's going to make you a stronger person. So I finally had completed that portrait. And yes, I did receive a lot of recognition for it. And it wasn't expected. I think it surprised me in a lot of ways. But with each certificate that I got, I eventually had that portrait published in the Thurber House's Flip the Page journal. um, I think I realized that it was all meant to happen in some way. And it wasn't just about the award, it was, leaving a piece of her legacy behind and something that was tangible, something that I could have for years and years to come. And that meant so much to me to this day. Um, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult. It was really, really hard for the first couple months. It's still been 2 years and it's still feels really raw some days. But I think that, grief comes in waves. And if you can ride it out to the next tide, you're going to be all right.
Rhea, you're so emotionally mature. Those words sound like something an adult therapist would tell me. And I just feel so moved by hearing that, how you processed and how hard it was, but you got stuck with it. You gave yourself time. I have a feeling your grandmother would have been incredibly proud and honored. And I'm sure she was with you. I mean, getting that done and working through that is amazing. It's a testament to your strength. So, thinking about awards and achievements, and art awards aren't the only kind you've gotten, and I'm not going to brag too much. You've done a lot so far in a short time. Sometimes people don't always see the work behind them, the struggle, the effort.
Yeah, for sure. I think going back to my grandmother's passing, that was a big one because that was right before my first AP exam season. And that was really difficult for me, learning how to balance all of those exams while also coming home every single day and just not having motivation to do anything. Um, And it took a lot of discipline, I think, more than anything. I kind of found a lot of distraction in my work. I felt like almost a strange kind of comfort in just like reading the AP US history textbook and like highlighting things, even though it was, I probably wasn't processing the information as well as I could have been. Um, just showing up every day, I think, is what makes the most difference. And for sure, I mean, I think academic achievements and awards, look great on paper, but a lot of times the work that goes in, it's not that easy. And sometimes discipline isn't the only thing that gets you through it. I remember the first time I got a C on an APUS history test, and I thought it was the end of the world because up until then, I had very much been an A level student. And at that time, it felt so, I guess, it really destroyed my confidence a little bit. And I almost felt like I wasn't good enough. But I think and that in those kinds of moments you have to take a step back and decide what kind of person you want to be if you're going to sit there and cry about it, which honestly I think expressing your emotions is the way to go for a little bit. But I had to decide, am I eventually going to, sit down at my desk and try again and try harder for the next test, or am I just going to give up completely? And I decided to just keep moving forward. So, I think in the moments of self doubt, it can be really hard to pick yourself back up again and, decide to try, especially in school where it's so normalized to do so many difficult classes and, put so much on your plate and then also balance sports like other students or art, music, so many extracurricular activities. I think it's really difficult sometimes to get through that. But I think honestly, believing in yourself is the best thing that you can do because at the end of the day, if you don't believe that you can do it, I mean, you're your biggest believer, but you can also be your biggest hater sometimes. I've definitely felt that. So,
Sometimes I've heard it compared to or asked, what would you say to your best friend if they're going through a rough patch or they had some kind of a failure or setback? How would you talk to them? And then how do you compare that to how you talk to yourself? Because sometimes people are the most hard on themselves when really we should be supporting ourselves and trying to get through it and give ourselves positive words in our mind, not tear ourselves down, because that's not okay. I mean, if you want anyone to build you up, you should be that person first. So I definitely agree. We have a saying in my house that you made me think of. It's there are people that cry about problems and people that solve problems. Which do you want to be today? Meaning, you can be upset, but like make a choice. Are you going to go forward and fix whatever's wrong, or are you just going to complain and admire the problem? Because nothing's going to change. So, definitely, I think you've said so many things that resonate. Thinking about service, you have volunteered many different places: libraries, hospitals, zoos, community organizations. What have these experiences taught you about people?
for sure, I think volunteering at first, I thought it was a lot about me. It was about building my confidence and, learning how I can be a more effective communicator. But the more places I volunteered, the more time that I volunteered, I realized that community service is more about the people that you're helping. For example, if there's an issue when you're volunteering and you need to help someone, problem solving isn't so much about fixing the issue, but doing what you can to help that person who's experiencing the issue. So I think I've learned that, especially, working and being in places such as zoos and libraries, you see people from all walks of life. You genuinely never know what someone else is going through. And it sounds cliche, but it really is true. Um, I've had days volunteering at hospitals where, people are obviously not the most friendly because they might have a family member who is going through a really rough patch. And I think it's important to not take things personally sometimes and realize that it's not really about you, it's about the customer, it's about the guest. And helping them through that is it can be as simple as holding the door open for them or giving them a smile. I've had patients tell me at the hospital, like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you walked into my room today. You genuinely like made my whole day." And I think it's really moving to process how impactful one conversation can be, even if it's as simple as, "How are you? How are you doing today?" And, patients giving a genuine answer like, "I did not like my surgery," and that's okay. And sometimes being there for people is the best thing that you can do. Even if an interaction isn't 100% positive, that's okay. I think it matters so much more about how the other person feels walking out of it rather than what you take from the conversation and how they reacted to you. So I think that having that empathy for others is the biggest thing that I've learned from working with people.
Oftentimes, some people have anxiety in engaging with others, or like you said, with providing customer service. But when you take the approach of how can I help, you're truly trying to help, whether you have all the answers to the problem at hand. I don't think you can go wrong. I think that's an awesome life philosophy. It also takes away a lot of that anxiety. You're not worried about yourself and impression or judgment. It's all about serving the other person. A lot of adults spend time talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And what do you think they misunderstand? What do they get wrong? Think about you, your peers. I'm sure you see strengths and have hope for the future because of those around you. What do you think adults are getting wrong about this generation?
I think in this day and age, I think there's a lot of stigma almost around, newer generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and I think the what I see adults being the most concerned about is distraction, especially with social media. I think there's a lot of like, oh, kids nowadays are just scrolling on their phones, and the term doom scrolling has also become a thing. And I think it's important to acknowledge the other side. Like me being on the other side of the conversation, I'm like, yes, I do think social media is an issue and it can be a distraction for, many of my peers, for myself. But I think it's also important to note how my generation has bounced back from that. For example, now we see a lot of content creators, content creation being not only a source of income, but as a lucrative career. And I think that is so inspiring to see how people are taking something that would normally be considered a distraction and actually making a living out of it. And finding what they're passionate about, being creative through that. I think also with the pandemic, it seems like it happened so long ago, but I think that impacted my generation, even, Gen Alpha, because we were so young when that happened. And learning how to come back from such a big educational setback was really difficult, and learning how to go back to school in person again and actually engage with others and have conversations on like with another human being face to face instead of on a screen, that those were all skills that we had to relearn. So I think what people misunderstand about Gen Z the most is that, maybe we're a little bit lazy. It doesn't seem like we're picking a stable career path. But on the other side of it, I think that we are probably the generation who's experienced the most amount of change in society thus far. Speaking of technological advances with AI and how that's going to impact our education, learning to adapt to that socially and in the classroom is something that we have never seen before. So I feel like I have so much hope in my generation just because of the amount of resilience that we have. Because every single year, it seems like there's something else happening that is completely, uprooting everything that we've known and having us and forcing us to learn something new. So, I totally understand when adults say that, Gen Z is distracted, they're not doing enough. Um, but I think if you look at the other side, you can probably tell a very different story. And I do have a lot of hope for our future because I think that people are being more creative than ever nowadays with, content creation, AI, and still in traditional classroom settings, getting a college degree or going into the workforce, the military. There's so many more options today than we've ever had before for students to choose a career path or, create a new career of their own. And I honestly find that really inspiring.
I agree with you. And after you articulated that so well, I think a lot of our listeners are going to agree with you as at you too. That was so well said. I had not thought of it in the perspective that you just shared, thinking about how your generation has already been through so much and watching you overcome all of the obstacles and continue to have amazing ideas and contributions to society. That really is what we should be focusing on. We shouldn't focus on the setbacks, but what you did to overcome or go around or, get through those challenges is amazing. That is such a great point. I'm really glad you brought that up. So with that in mind, let's say I hand you a magic wand and I say, Rhea, you can change one thing about society or education or your community, the world. What would you choose and why?
Think about this. That's a really good question. I would say I would probably change stereotypes. I think stereotypes are, I guess, from a psychological point of view, mental shortcuts that people use to make assumptions about a person or a group. And I feel like it is so normalized these days to, create stigma around certain people or groups simply because of what they look like or where they come from. And I feel like if we had eliminated stereotypes or, not normalize judging someone before we even look at them, I feel like we can connect so much better, as a community. And all around the world, I feel like if we were to focus more on who people actually are and get to know them before we, assume something about them, I feel like society would be way more productive and progressive. And I think we could actually focus on issues that mattered in our world today.
I agree. And I hear you. I think there's so much more we agree on than disagree on. And a lot of times people do want to just make a quick judgment and put someone in a box and say, oh, they're this or they're that, and not give them a chance. But people are so much more complex than that. They're not one thing. And we all have the ability to be many things. But if you don't take the time to get to know someone and be curious, I think that's my thing. If we avoided stereotyping and we're just curious about each other, and caring with that like empathetic kind of approach, like you suggested earlier, I feel like we could make this world such a better place. And when we have people like you out there trying to share that message, I'm hopeful this generation is going to help us to shift how we act toward one another because I don't think they fit into a mold nicely. I think we've got such diversity, strength in the diversity of of your generation, of Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha who's coming up next. It has such potential, and that awareness that you have of that already, I think is going to be the thing that makes the change happen. It starts, with just a few people, and if we really try to spread that, hopefully we can get somewhere. Um, I'm wondering, like, as you look ahead, you're about to start college and eventually some kind of career. W- What kind of problems are you most interested in solving now?
Problems that I'm most interested in solving are in the medical field. So I plan to major in biomedical engineering for now. And I honestly think I have found the most passion for myself in helping others. I think biomedical engineering is going to allow me to, use innovation to create new medical devices and to actually impact people's lives every single day. And that is just so intriguing and also inspiring to me because honestly, the thing that I look forward to the most going into college is meeting new people from all walks of life and expanding my knowledge and my horizons on how I think about others. As well as how I can be of service to the community and what individuals need, individuals with disabilities, individuals who may not experience life in the same normalcy, I'm gonna put that in quotes, that we think about every single day. And I think putting myself in someone else's shoes is really gonna help me actually make a difference in the world.
Sounds like an amazing fit for your skill set. You'll have to check out one of my earlier episodes interviewing Aaron Westbrook. He is the CEO of a nonprofit called Form 5 that's out of Westerville. And Aaron was born with a limb difference, and he creates kind of like prosthetics for different types of specific activities. He just did a massive bike ride to raise awareness, and he made a prosthetic for that ride. But he works with community and brings in all kinds of experts to design these types of devices. And he started when he was in high school and now runs this company. He's done it for, I don't know, probably almost a decade, I would imagine. It's fascinating. His story all centered around trying to help people with limb differences. So, what kind of impact would you hope to have in the future?
A couple decades from now, I would love to have my own biotech company where I can improve access to medical devices for people, especially in impoverished countries. I think that's something that is still an issue today, despite how much technology we have, it's still not accessible to everyone. And of course, I would love to hopefully innovate something new. Um, that can really help people around the globe because I feel like access is so important in equality as well. I think that it all starts with someone taking an initiative to include people and make them feel seen.
Wonderful. What advice do you think you'd give a younger version of yourself?
Question. I think I would tell a younger version of myself to don't take it too seriously, honestly. But I guess, to be completely serious, I think I would tell her to not stress out so much because I think in the past I've been really focused on the outcome. And I think that we can get so caught up in, all this work that we put into just to achieve one outcome. Um, and I wish that a younger version of myself kind of enjoyed the journey a little bit more because I feel like the outcome is something that we cannot always control, but what we can control are the choices that we make along the way and, enjoying the mistakes and how we learn from them. I think I, I wish that I had been more aware and kind of lived in the moment a little bit more.
Wise words. You still have time. Okay, couple rapid fires. These are just one sentence or less kind of answers. Um, what are you curious about right now?
Ooh, let me think about that. I think I'm really curious overall about how AI is going to impact education. I think in, high schools, middle schools, even elementary schools, and especially going into college, how that's going to change the way that we learn. I'm really curious about how that's going to make an impact on our future because I think it's going to be very different from what we're experiencing right now.
I agree. And we'll find out, right? um, what are you currently reading, listening to, or watching that you would recommend to others?
Ooh, have currently been listening to a lot of Michael Jackson. Totally recommend the new Michael movie. But in all seriousness, I think that listening to music that is uplifting and that makes you feel empowered can really rapidly change your mood, and that can in turn make you more productive and honestly change your mindset. And I think that has been something that's been really important to me, especially in recent years. I think going through a lot of failures and setbacks, I think your mindset is what's going to get you through those challenges the most. And so something as simple as, listening to MJ, that's what helps me turn my day around when I'm going through it.
I love picturing you jam into Michael Jackson. He's a legend. What's one thing you want listeners to try or learn or pay attention to this month?
This month, I would love listeners to try and put themselves out of their comfort zone in order to help someone else. I think that, especially nowadays, we're so caught up in technology and looking at our phones, and even, holding the door open for someone is just a really small act of kindness that can go a really long way. And I think that the world would be a much more positive place if we all took a little bit initiative to do something small, even if it's showing up for a community service event to help someone else in need.
Fantastic suggestion. Okay, final question. This podcast, it's called Innovate Where You Are. For someone listening today who feels like they're too young or too inexperienced or not qualified enough to make a difference, what would you tell them?
I would tell them don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you that you can't. I think that um, a lot of, teens struggle with circumstance. And I think even adults, everyone of all ages, I think we can kind of hold ourselves back because of the circumstance that we find ourselves in. But I think it's so important to remember that you are so much more than what you've been through or what you are going through. And it is never too late or too early to start making a difference in your community. And sometimes that might be walking up to someone and saying, "Hey, how can I help you?" Or, looking out for opportunities where you can volunteer in your community. I think making an impact, it all starts with something small.
That's a great way to end. Rhea Ojah, it's been so fantastic talking to you today. Thank you for your time.
Of course, great to be here, Christy.
Thanks for listening to Innovate Where You Are. Check the show notes for links and resources from today's conversation. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/Christy Venny. Until next time. Thanks for listening to Innovate Where You Are. Check the show notes for links and resources from today's conversation. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/Christy Venny. Until next time.